Do you remember the early days of the internet? Websites were full of clutter, super slow, and difficult to navigate. Back then, the user experience was an afterthought at best. But then, something changed. Designers began to focus on creating interfaces that were intuitive, visually appealing, and user friendly. And thus, the field of UI and UX was born. So I decided to talk to someone who's seen the evolution of digital designs from its earliest days of shabby boxes and unreadable fonts to today, where every company under the sun needs a UI UX pro. Meet Bhavin. He's worked for brands like Yamaha, Lakme, and Google, and currently is the lead UI UX designer for Thumb, a conversational analytics firm based out of sunny California. Now let's jump right into today's episode of the Inquiry Hour and have a little chat with Bhawin Jagad. So, what is that one moment that you felt, okay, this is what I want to do in my life, right? This is what I do want to do with my life, product design, UI, UX. When was that one moment you fell in love with, or you knew that you gotta do this? Like, is there a moment, or was it like a process?
Uh, when I think this was back in 2009, 2010, when I think iPhones and websites and Facebook and Twitter started to be like a big, huge thing in our lives. That was the time I realized that people were engaged and people were hooked to that particular websites that on a daily basis, right? So uh, I felt like, what if I did not know the process at all, like what goes into making of a website or what goes into making of a app or something. But then I came across, like as you said, that I actually was a financial planner before, and then I jumped into this whole career of UI and UX design. So that finance company that I worked for actually gave me an opportunity to work on their own website. So they saw me sitting on Facebook and Twitter and not doing anything at that point of time in that company, because that was the huge shift basically for a lot of youngsters at that point. I think
Yeah,
everyone was on Facebook. If
yeah.
you remember Farmville and all, like a lot of people used to play. And so my boss kind of realized that, okay, if you really love doing this whole digital side of things, do one thing. I'm giving you a challenge. Go ahead and build my website. So I kind of uh, got in touch with one of the designers from Delhi, who actually had studied the whole product design thing from NID.
Hmm.
His name is Nitin. So he actually created some sort of UI and he sent it across to me. And I was like, what is this? Like, why is this buttons and why is this just an image, right? It's why is this a JPEG? He said that, okay, this is the structure, Bhavin. How about you help me with basic set of wireframes to build that particular website?
Hmm.
And then I did like, what is a wireframe? I did not know what is a wireframe. I felt like, okay, let me figure this out on my own. But then my boss said that, okay, wireframe is just basic pen paper. You can kind of draw some boxes and send it across to him, and he will realize, okay, this is how I have to make.
Hmm.
And then I sent that wireframe to him. It was just a basic login sign up screen. Okay, you just
Right.
put the input fields and there's a CTA, simple. He sent a beautifully designed
Oh,
UI of it. And I fell in love with that thing. I'm like, what? Is this even a career? Is this
wow.
even a is this even a thing that you can pursue? I did not know this. And then I spoke to my boss and like, this is really interesting. I want to do this. How do I do that? And they're like, perfect. So you do one thing. I think take baby steps in this. Build my website. You will realize that there's a lot that you have to learn. And then I did everything on my own. Like I did wireframing, I did pen paper, I sat with Nitin, I had a lot of conversation with him, like how he did this. And that point of time, there was no Figma, there was no Sketch, there was no there were no applications like that, which I think they've made our lives easier right away. But at
Right.
that point of time, it was just Photoshop and Illustrator. So he used to
Oh,
make designs on Photoshop. Imagine it
yeah.
was really like big deal to learn Photoshop for that one. And I fell in love with that thing. I fell in love with the output that he generated, like those colors, those textures, those fonts, those icons, and everything was so aligned and so nicely done. I was like, this is exactly what I also want to do. I also have some ideas. I also want to build something, and that's where I jumped into this whole career of UI and UX design. Right.
What about your first professional project? What was the first thing you worked on in like real life as a project?
Um, I think that itself was my real life project, like working with that finance company's website. That was my first project. But I wouldn't consider that because there was a lot of mentoring also done from my bosses and, even Nitin. But if you ask me as an individual project, then I would say that I worked for this agency called The Glitch. Uh, I worked there for 3 years and I got amazing set of experience working with clients like Google, Yamaha, and Lakme and all. So I used to build microsites for them.
Right.
So microsites are purely from the perspective of creating certain short-term campaigns. At that point of time, it was a huge deal to get people from Facebook to that particular website and upload selfies. And so my
Damn.
bosses, Varun and Rohit, gave me this opportunity to build one particular website and show it to them first, and then they can pitch it to that client. So it was like, okay, wow, my website's actually going to go to the larger audience now. I started making Facebook pages also. Like Facebook pages had like certain tabs inside it, which were like microsites, right?
Right.
And that's where Google, Yamaha, Lakme, lot of other brands like from Unilever and all, they started we started pitching one by one. And I realized, okay, this is something people want today. But I was still struggling for making it because I did not know Photoshop at all. But I was kind of managing the designers who were there, and
Right.
those were graphic designers. Okay, to convince a graphic designer to push a button from here to here, it was a tedious task. Okay, to get that whole alignment right and everything, it
Yeah.
was a huge tedious task at that point.
Yep.
But I knew what I wanted to do. And I knew that, okay, this was not proper. So I kind of gave them the guidance. I realized that I could also mentor them. I could actually give my directions to them.
Right.
And I realized that I could handle the whole project very nicely.
Right.
And that's where the whole career shift also happened. And there were a lot of microsites, a lot of websites, and a lot of, small instances where I could actually show my thought process, my workflow, my designs to the bigger, larger audience. That's where the whole shift happened for me as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's where I think, yeah.
How did it feel like creating something for Google? Like Google is like billions of people using it.
So I would say that for Google, it was a little different than what you could actually see right now, what Google is doing. This was, I worked for Google India closely for their own internal data application, which was not
Interesting.
published. It was not published out for the larger audience, but it was only for the internal employees that were there.
Right.
Let's say if Google India is going to pitch for some larger company,
Yeah.
they can actually take this application and whatever questions that they put, they can get some sort of data and show it to the clients.
Interesting.
So that was most challenging task for me to kind of pitch my designs to Google, right?
Right.
Pitch my work that kind of helps them help others, basically.
Right.
Are you understanding? So I kind of had to. I did not know UX at all at that point of time. No UI, no UX, but I think it was just pure trust factor that okay, this guy can actually build something and give me. That's where I think they kind of liked the work, they liked the design, they liked the approach that I was taking. And it was not a normal approach, okay? It was not just static screens. It was like, okay, I'm typing something and there was this conversation happening between two people sitting. And they really like that thought and they really like that idea. I'm like, okay, this can actually work for internal audiences. It's not even boring for viewing it also. It's something really interactive that you can do.
Right.
So this kind of made me realize that, okay, I have to study more, I have to learn more. It's not just this, right? Then I got then I got introduced this application called Sketch,
Hmm.
and that's where the whole magic began, and a lot of churning happened with my experiment with Sketch, my YouTube being my university, and learning a lot from Sketch and building a lot of websites. I think after Sketch, my career has just like boomed super enormously. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, trust. That's an important concept for anyone to understand. Like it's more than capability. It comes down to building that trust, right? That's
But it
pretty.
also is your output, right? So
Yeah. That's how you build
if
it, right? You build trust
if
with
it's
more and more
backing,
output.
correct,
Yeah.
if it's backing your factor of output and trust together,
Right.
I think you have like a good combo to push things that way.
Right. So now let's take a few steps back, right? For the audience who is not aware of UI UX, is not aware of this whole field of product design. How would
Mhm.
you explain it to like a 5-year-old like me, essentially me? How would you explain it to a kid who's not aware of this whole field, and why is it UI UX? What's like the difference between the two, and why are there so many different fields of design, right? I've heard interaction design, graphic design.
Mm.
There are a bunch of these. What's the
Correct,
difference between all of this?
correct, correct. So to kind of clear the doubt of UI and UX, I think UX comes always first, then comes the UI. It's not UI and UX, it's UX and UI in kind of totality that you look into it. But to a layman, to a normal person, UI UX as a career is a different scope of things, and graphic design, arts, and visual design is completely different scope of things. So again, you kind of don't combine them together. I think they
Hmm.
both have its own importance, and they both have its own you know courses and structure that you have to follow to learn these things.
Hmm.
But now I'll give you an example of what product design and UI and UX and how it came into, like, what it actually is if you want to explain it to someone, right? Today, even my mom or even my relatives, they don't know what I build, right? I have to kind of explain them holding a phone or showing some website saying that, you see this, you see the button that you see the text that is there. It's all me, and a lot of people actually using it. So it's very difficult to convince them. So it's a
Yeah.
very right question that you asked me, that what is UX and UI and how to kind of explain this thing to them. So I usually give an analogy between what a chef does and what a UI UX person does. Like, and I'm going to compare these things and kind of simplify this thing for you. Okay. So let's start off with the chef. Okay. What chef does is he is a pro in making recipes and serving dishes and cooking the right set of meal with the right set of ingredient, not much, not less. So he is a professional in that. What
Hmm.
a UI UX is, he is a professional in solving the problem
Hmm.
by screens.
Hmm.
He is a problem solver. He's a person who can find the gaps to yeah, he's the person who can bridge the gap between the problem, right?
Right.
So for example, if you look at Zomato, or if you look at Swiggy, or if you look at Stripe today, they are
Hmm.
the problem solvers of one particular category. So if you
Hmm.
compare them, they're almost similar, but now I'll talk about how they kind of gel together, right?
Right.
So for chef, uh, ingredients matter. That's the first step. He
Hmm.
knows, he's done his research, but ingredients matter, right?
Hmm.
He will bring all the, let's say if he wants to get sushi made, he will
Hmm.
start with the rice, he'll start with the rolling paper, he will start with the salmon, he will start with some chutneys that he wants to add, like
Right.
wasabi or something. So
Yeah.
he will cook all of that, but he will add the right set of ingredient at the right point of time. Now, this is his making process, if you look at it. Now, compare this thing with a UI UX person, right? A UI UX person, he will start doing market research. He will start looking at other websites. He will start bringing the components. He will look at the business goals. He will look at the problem statement. He will start bringing in all the components together. He will start structuring and he will start adding the right screens at the right point of time in the whole journey.
Right.
Now that is his wireframing flow. That is his UX flow. That is his UX research flow, persona flow. All of this is a part of this side of the process of UX and UI.
Right.
Same again goes for the chef, right? He
Right.
did all of this for that person who has ordered the dish on the table.
Right.
Okay. So now for both of them, it's very simple. Everything is ready. It's ready to ship. For the UX person, the website is ready, the app is ready. He is about to ship it to the market. For a chef, the dish is ready. The final set of garnishing needs to be done. Now that garnishing that you see for the UI UX person on the website or an app, it's the final finishing touches that you have to give on the UI, right? So he will actually make sure that the color scheme is right, the fonts are right, the whole crispness of the website is looking very good on the output, right? Perfect. Both of them are on the same lines now. You serve this thing to your users. You serve this thing on the table. So chef will go and serve it on the table for that particular person who is hungry. It's there. For UI UX, the website will be live, the app will be live. Right. A lot of people will start downloading. A lot of people will start typing the website and go to the browser and see the UI.
Right.
The last bit for them is the experience part. Again, for a chef, what is a win-win situation for him is if the user or the end user, he has tasted one bite and he really likes that.
Right.
And actually, let me take 2 steps back. What he sees is basically the UI, right?
Right.
On the dish that you see, it's the UI. It has to be very scrumptious, delicious. Like it should be mouth-watering for the user. Like he's hungry, but he has to take that first bite. Similarly for the website. So today, if you look at Stripe, the website is amazing, right? From top to bottom, it's beautifully designed. So you'll always fall in love with that first impression that you're creating with the user. Again, both have to do that. Chef also has to do that. Even the UI UX person also has to do that.
Yeah.
Correct. Now coming to the last part, which is the experience part. I take a bite from that thing. I really like it and I'm happy with the output. I will give the feedback to the chef saying that, okay, you built some amazing thing. You cooked some amazing meal over here. Right. Similarly for Swiggy or Zomato, even if you ordered a dish online on Swiggy, they ask you for a feedback, right? Like, did you like the dish or do you want to give some tip to the person who's coming? Again, that's a feedback that you're giving. But I need to like that particular website. I need to fall in love with the UI. I need to fall in love with the experience of my problem, which is hunger over here, like Swiggy and Zomato, right? They've made our lives easier. Even Uber, Ola, they've made our lives easier that way, right? So they're trying to solve a particular problem. So for both of them, the end result is, are the users happy or not?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like simple analogy of a chef doing everything versus a UI UX person doing everything. Yeah.
Interesting. So if I could, I guess, paraphrase it, summarize it in a way, a UI UX guy, the UI or the UX side of it is essentially the components, right? The ingredients when it comes to cooking. It's like finding the right ingredients to solve the problem, right? The core problem. It's doing the research, finding the right ingredients, and then attaching them together at the whole cooking process, right? And I suppose the user interface, the UI side, is the garnishing, the finishing of this whole thing, right? The button, how it looks, the colors, whether it's all in unison. And then the feedback comes back, and then you again go through the process of UI UX, right?
Correct. So it's like a loop of things. But yeah, I think in analogy, I think I always give this analogy of chef versus UX and UI kind of simplifies. So it'll help you visualize what we do. It will help you understand what goes into the making of that
Right.
particular thing, right?
Right. It does make
Yeah,
it a lot tangible, right? For someone who
correct,
doesn't know a lot of like, it doesn't realize the inner workings of like a digital product. I think this makes so much sense, right? It's like
correct.
food that you can sense. Almost it's like a sensation only, right?
Yeah,
When you use a
like,
design.
so if you look at that chef example, right? The experience doesn't end in just the viewing of it, right?
Right.
There are senses also, as you mentioned
Yeah.
very nicely. You
Yeah.
smell the food,
Yeah.
you see the food, you also have that smoke coming out of the food.
Yeah.
It'll tempt you more to do things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It'll tempt you to come back to that particular place again.
Yeah.
Like, I love this person's pav bhaji. I love this person's sushi. I love this restaurant's coffee or this cafe's croissant or something like that. So similarly over here, like, why do you go to Uber always to book a cab? Because it has created that trust factor that they get you the right cab at the right time. Even
Right.
for Swiggy and Zomato, they give you the right food at the right time.
And what about graphic design? So, how does
Hmm.
a designer come into the picture in this whole experience, right? How does that work its way?
As I said initially also, so graphic design is a very minor part of UI UX, is what I understand. It's where the visual component, like illustrations, icon sets, if I want to add that to my website, or if I want to add some sort of a background layer, or if I want to add some sort of texture to my website, I think they'll be the right person to give you the right set of components when you want. But for
Interesting.
a UI UX person, it's more like, I'm going to add buttons, I'm going to add pixels, I'm going to add fonts, I'm going to add icon sets from some sort of ready-made pack or something, and I'm going to build something and give it to them. But it might not have that flair. It might
Right.
not have that, you know, uh, it's not appealing.
Interesting.
Like, so now what
Got
do
it.
you do as a UI UX? You start adding visuals to it.
Right.
You add photos, you add illustrations, you add some animations, you add some interactions. But here is some sort of components when it comes to like vectors or graphics. That's where a graphic designer can come into picture.
Interesting.
Okay,
So
when it
in
comes to only product design,
right.
not like you draw something and give it to them, but it's more like Photoshop work or Illustrator work that they can come to eventually. Yeah.
So let's say on the Stripe website, the
Mm.
topmost section has like a banner image which
Right.
has a bunch of colors, which has a lot of things happening. That
Correct.
is the work of a graphic
It
designer.
is it is a direction that a graphic designer can give. He can
Okay,
give that asset to the UI UX person, but then
understood.
it's up to the UI UX person how to use it.
Interesting. Interesting.
Right? Does he want to place the Stripe website with that cut like this, or does he
Yep.
want to have it a cut like this? It's up to the UI UX person how to use it.
Right.
Right?
Right. So talking about UI UX design,
Hmm.
how does one become a UI UX designer? Like, what's the journey that you would take if you decide let's become a UI UX designer? This is what I want to do. What how would you recommend someone to take that journey?
So, adding a context of learning things today, if you ask me, uh, I am a self-taught person. I am a self-learned person. No one was kind of here to guide me that you can go to a school or you can take some education from this university for design. I did not know any of that thing. Plus, I did not have that enough money to kind of do those set of courses back in the days. But today, if you ask me, uh, there are really nice design schools, really good UI UX institutes who teach you some amazing things. Like, for example, I would highly, highly recommend. This is not a paid this thing or a sponsored this thing, but I would highly recommend Memorizely. Like, it's one of the amazing design institutes, or you can call like a group of or a bunch of you know uh, team who's trying to help build the next UI UX people in the market. And the way they teach is so amazing. I think Xander Whitehurst, the owner of Memorize, he's doing some fantastic job on social media also, on and even like face to face also. Whenever you kind of meet him,
Yep.
the energy that he brings in, it kind of gives you some amazing vibes to kind of learn
Yep.
UI UX in totality. Figma has solved shitloads of problems today. The workflow has become so easy for people to kind of learn UI UX today. Uh, I'll tell you the problem statement right now for a lot of students is they look UI UX only in isolation, the visual component, and that's it. But I think that's a very wrong way to look at it. There's a lot of hard work that goes before UI, is what my understanding is. You
Yep.
have to you have to learn the business aspect of it. You have to learn the user psyche. You have to understand and build a persona, that what's your right TG. There's a lot of work that goes in the background. But students don't want to do this today. Students directly want to jump on the UI. They want to directly, I want to build a website. I want to build an app. Okay, this is my website. Let me jump. I don't want to waste time on wireframes. I want to do this. But I feel that this side of things, or the UX side of things, has a lot of power. You still don't know. So
Yep.
if a new person is joining and doing this particular career and want to enter into this career, UX earns shitloads of money than UI. You'll be
Right.
surprised to see this. You learn UX specialist or a UX designer earns shitloads of money than a UI designer. Why? Because there's a lot of research involved, the right set of researchers involved. But for a UI, it's more visual. So you know that you can get these components from the 10 places, you crack something, you cook something and show it visually.
Yep. Yep.
But both go hand in hand. But if you know both of this together,
Yep.
I would say you are a better designer. You come with some sort of a mindset that
Right.
you want to build this, you will do some research first and then start working on it. So for a new person, if you ask me, I would say Memorizely Design School is the best right now out of so many. There are a lot of other design schools also. I think 10K Designers is also one really amazing institute by Abhinav Chikara. Then there is Flux Academy.
Yep.
Flux Academy is run by Ran Segel. He is also doing some amazing job with the whole web flow and
Yep.
six-figure salary thing. I mean, amazing job. These 4 people that are doing today.
And
But
yep.
sorry, but best thing is YouTube. Best university today is YouTube. So if you really want to get into this career, you start building your portfolio. You start working on solving certain set of your daily problems that you go across. Show this thing to some set of people that does it make sense. Then you will realize that you are into the right track. If you're not doing that on a daily basis to solve that, you're not on the right track. You'll have to do a lot of learnings in the background, right? So YouTube is the best. I've learned it from YouTube. I've learned it from certain set of mentors. So I know what happens in the background. I know that what I have done as my mistakes that I have done, probably today's students or today's people have much more easier access to a lot of things. A lot of resources are available today.
Yeah.
Back in my days, there were not much. I feel old by talking this, but there were no resources available to that time, that point of time. But now it's become super easy. Your workflow has become super easy. Also, AI has come into picture. So I think things have become super easy actually.
And I believe Flux is they are on YouTube as well, right? I've watched a lot
they're
of
doing some amazing job on YouTube as well.
Yeah. I agree. YouTube is like pretty much a game changer for me also. Like because more than designing, my life has been circling around product management, right? And I get to see like the whole life cycle of product development as well as product design. And
right.
Our generation, the millennial generation, we've all been brought up through YouTube itself. Like all our learnings are like stole everything for free, and but now
Correct. That's what.
Yeah. Now there's like a lot more curated content. I think that the problem now that people are facing is there's too much information. There's too much on YouTube. What do I select? What do I do? And I think these Memorizely and these other platforms, they kind of curate your needs much better. So I think like it's a very like the direction is pretty much like built for you. That's pretty cool. What about
So
yeah, sorry.
So what Memrisely is doing, I think, is it's democratizing design. Like it's also giving you free tutorials on Insta Reels and all. Like if
Right.
you want to build this, this is the way. So it's like it's still giving you free resources. It's teaching you in a very free space, free environment. Plus, if you want to learn more, I think you also build that trust, right? Again, this is the right person who I should learn from, right? So you're
Yeah.
building that as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to kind of democratize that particular sector, kind of to also help others as well, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You mentioned uh, very briefly about Sketch, how it changed your entire trajectory
Mm,
of your career, right? And I believe
right.
now that is Figma, I suppose, right? What
Yes,
in
correct.
your day-to-day life, what are the softwares that you use? What are the tools that you use to sort of accomplish your goals or complete your projects, right, end to end? What are give some of like your workflow so that like people who are getting into it can again take a look at these tools. I believe they are all online, right?
Correct. Correct. So this is my designer stack, if you ask me, like
Yeah.
what tools I used. First is Figma, which I often use for directly UI designing. I use FigJam also, probably
Hmm.
for like, brainstorming and coming up with, observations and strategies. And we do some sort of whiteboarding and all on FigJam. So this is one of my go-to place for designing and, building something in terms of application and website, right?
Yeah.
For communication, we internally use Slack between the teams. There is Discord also. Discord is purely for building the community. Like I have some sort of small communities of designers who I interact with very closely. Then there is also Microsoft Teams, where you also have for internet communication for some different sort of teams as well. So these are a couple of them for communications. Then for my documentation and all, I use Notion.
Yep.
I have everything logged in on Notion. It's very easily accessible on my phone and my iPad and my computer. So Notion is the next thing. Uh, Apart from that, Notion, I use Arc browser, by the way. Like Arc
Oh,
browser is
interesting.
like one of the game changers, to be very honest, to be super productive if you're working on a particular project. Arc browser has these spaces. It has these amazing set of features that they launch. Like they have this pen paper diagram thing separately if you want to take some notes while you are on a website or something. It's an amazing browser. I think it's one of the best things ever happened after Google Chrome. Right, a lot of people are jumping and a lot of people are moving out of Chrome because Chrome is becoming so heavy that it starts to crash.
Right.
But uh, Arc browser is kind of trying to solve that, where it's building this whole ecosystem of how a browser experience works basically. So Arc browser is one of my next go to this thing. So even right now also I am on that thing where I'm reading components. My Twitter and everything is just going on over there. Then I also have Cron. Have you
Hmm.
heard of Cron? Cron is
Calendar, right?
one of my calendar scheduling, and also Cron is one of my go-to place for scheduling meetings and organizing my schedule from top to bottom. So Cron is that. I also use Loom recordings for if I want to explain some sort of feature to my team, or if I want to send some sort of screen recording to my colleagues or something where this is wrong. I think you saw this experience. This is broken. I don't know why is this not working. So I used Loom also.
Interesting.
And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And then for music and all, you have Spotify just to have your focus going on. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Hey there. I hope you're finding this conversation super insightful. To support the podcast, rate us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcast. And if you're watching it on YouTube, do hit the like and sub button because that's the only way we know how to reach more people on these platforms. I'm going to stop interrupting and let the conversation flow till the end. I'll see you there. I think We mentioned a little bit about the resources that you've used to learn, right? Um,
Mm.
are there any books that you would recommend, especially like you mentioned, people sort of jump over the user experience research side of things, right? Are there any
Yeah.
books that you would recommend viewers to check out, learn more about the initial stages about of research, stuff like that?
There are a lot of books actually, but there are certain design books that I would recommend, which is Hooked. Then there is Design of Everyday Things. Then
Yep.
there is uh, Design Sprint by Jake Knapp. That is
Yep.
also there. These are the couple of books that I would recommend, which are in this whole design ecosystem where you have to read it through and kind of uh, im- try to put those things in practice by
Practice.
reading it. Right.
Yep. Yep.
There's one more book called Don't Make Me Think
Yep.
by Steve Krug or something. I think the first founders of Instagram or someone who's
Right.
written those books. But yeah, I think these couple of books are really interesting to read. And yeah, I think there are certain biographies also, like Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all. They have some amazing content in their book that they try to how they have came up with these ideas and all. So it's really interesting to read that part as well. Yeah.
So, like, here's a problem that I face very regularly, like in the product management side of things. So, like, I have like a vested interest in knowing your answer, right? So, um, UI UX design, product design is more on the creative side, right? There's like a whole creative
Mm.
flow, creative aspect to it.
Right.
But an employee doesn't have that time, right? No one has like go in like a trance, have some mushrooms, and just like go crazy. You don't have that level of luxury. You don't have that like there are constraints that we have to put, like
Mm.
management has to put uh, on to designers, on to other creative fields. Like how do you
Right.
manage that? How do you manage and get the best out of a designer or yourself, right? How do you get the best out of your creativity while having constraints, and what are those constraints?
So I think I'll answer this question in two phases. One is the expectations, and the second would be how do you deal with the team.
Hmm.
So one is expectation is where you set the right expectation from your stakeholders that okay, this is what we are building and this is the time that it is going to take, and you set the right expectations on day one itself, so that you know that you're not uh, uh, wasting any time from their end versus you're not wasting time from your end as well. So you build that sort of trust in that first 4 or 5 outcomes that you're trying to give them, right? Now here you know that the expectations is set very right, that okay, this guy can give me the output on the right time and he's also giving the right output. So you have that sort of rapport going with them. But here what's happening in the background with the existing employees or your team members, for example, let's say if I have an experience of managing teams which are like 6 to 7 designers back in my companies that I worked for. So you have to manage the designers and you have to understand that they are not your colleagues, but they are part of what you are, right? So what you do is, okay, this guy is really good with UI design. So you kind of mentor that particular person saying that, okay, this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. Okay, I think you should build this, you should build this. You give them the feedback. Okay, you are the person who's always going to work on the UI. The other person, let's say if it's a graphic person, I'll give them the guidance saying that, okay, this is the graphic that you have to build. This is the vector illustration that you have to build. This is the time frame. And these are the constraints. Now, when I say constraints, the constraints can come in the form of time. The constraints can come in the form of colors. The constraints can come in the form of the tonality of the brand. It can be anything, but they have to work with those constraints, right? So now what you do in this scenario, even for a UI guy and also for a graphic guy, what do? You help them understand what others are also doing with that same constraint. You go do that referencing for them. You kind of help them. You kind of explain that if they are doing this way, I mean, there is something that even we can do with just these set of constraints as well. So you kind of motivate them to do and take them in that direction. I mean,
Right.
that's what I believe. That's what I believe in. Rather than giving them the brief and they coming up with their own ideas, yes, you can do that, but that might just waste time if they come up with something really random. So I would
Right.
love to debrief them and
Hmm.
kind of help them understand what the output is going to be.
Right. So you're talking about
So I think that's
referencing? Are you
I'm
like
talking about more
referring?
of referencing of other websites or other
Right.
applications and all. But again, not copying them for sure, not aping exact experience or something, but looking at them and getting just inspired by what they have built, right?
Hmm.
Like recently, I'll give an example of Tailwind CSS.
Yep.
They're doing some amazing thing and amazing work that they're doing. Even Lemon Squeezy,
Right.
they are doing some amazing thing when it comes to building the exact set of button size, exact set of icon sets, and some crazy stuff these two three people who are doing. Orman Clark, Daryl Grin, and I think James, someone from Twitter. I've been following them since quite some time. So
Yep.
again, I always give that as a reference to some of my designers, saying that look at that, or look at how they have took this opportunity with these set of constraints and built out nothing, like something out of nothing.
Right.
I mean, at least we have the resources, at least we have the brief, and we know what your powers are. Let's
Yep.
combine this thing and do something and build something,
Interesting.
right? So
Makes sense.
maybe this is one of the approach that I take. I think there are a lot of other teams who do some amazing work with the whole collaboration bit, but this is my approach that I take, where I kind of micromanage even their work,
Right.
like even my designers work. Like I have to micromanage them, give them the direction that they have to go.
Yep. Yep.
But
Makes sense.
it's different, yeah, for different set of designers that way.
But then um, how do you know when a design is right? Like, so if you were given, let's say, a landing page or a mobile application design, at
Hmm.
what point do you know that this design is the right design to either show your client or
Hmm.
to like go ahead with the development, right? What's that point you at which you can tell, okay, fine, this is done?
So there are two phases to it. One is that you look at it before it is getting built, and one is you once after it is getting built and it's out in the market, you get some numbers, right?
Yeah.
So first is you do the first hand user testing, I would say,
Yeah.
before you actually send it to the handover to the developers, right? So you do the first hand user testing, you might realize at least 50 to 60% of your problems, that are the users understanding or not. Do they even like the whole color combo? Do they even understand the font spacing, colors, like lighting in the background, things like that? So you might realize that, okay, you are in the right track. Maybe they give you a very vocal feedback about, okay, I did not understand what's happening on this screen. Maybe you might have to come up with some other solution to this. You realize at least 50 to 60% of your problem is solved over there, right?
Hmm.
You go back, you do some sort of rework, you build something which is better than what it was before, and you show it to that same person again.
Right.
Maybe you realize that, okay, now he kind of understands that, okay, now it makes sense because I think you placed everything in an orderly fashion. These are the steps that you have to take in order to achieve your goal on this particular screen. That's your first hand user testing that you should be doing ideally after whatever workflow that you are working on, right?
Right.
You will get
Right.
a lot of data for sure.
Yeah.
Now let's say, again, that's not 100%. So now let's say you give the handover to the developers, they build it, it goes out in the market. There's a lot of ad spends happening, a lot of push happening, a lot of people started using it. Now the product manager's role comes into picture over here. He will help us, he or she will help us in terms of understanding that there are bounce rates on this screen. There are bounce rates on that screen. People are not understanding and spending shitloads of time on this screen.
Right.
You know, at least you are 50% there, but now you have to solve for the rest of the 50%. You cannot be right always. You cannot be there is no right landing page or there is no right application screen, to be very honest. It's
Right.
always an experimental flow that you have to go through, right?
Right.
So now once you have those numbers, you know what screen you have to put more efforts on. That's your P0. So you start working towards that, you solve that.
Priority. Right. P0
Yeah,
is priority.
P0 is your priority, so you start working on that, and you realize that okay, you're at least getting closer to solving that problem. You're not solved the problem 100%, but
Yep.
you're getting closer to solving that problem by those numbers. Now, how
Understood.
do you realize that is if your bounce rate is, let's say, some set of percentage, let's assume 60%.
Just to clarify, like, can you explain what bounce rate is for the
Bounce rate specifically is, let's say, if you land on a particular website, and if you've not understood anything on that website and you just go away or you shut the website
right?
and you go to some other website, for example, I don't know where you go after that, but you've not understood that particular page, so you kind of shut that page or you shut that modal window or you shut that particular screen. That's for us in terms of the numbers is a bounce rate. So let's say
Understood.
out of 100 screens, you just understood only 50 screens, so 50% bounce rate, for example.
Right.
Again, I'm just giving you a number, but
Right.
bounce rate in technicality, if you ask to a product manager, it will be different examples that they
Yep.
will give you
Yep.
of bounce rates and even retention rate and all.
Right.
But that's just a metric that you can look into. There are a lot of other metrics that you can look into for making a particular screen or making a particular flow.
Right. So, uh, we spoke about a little bit about this whole like pre, like pre-building and post-building, right? Understanding how much, what effort needs to be taken uh, before it goes to the developer, and then after it goes to the development team. What is the like life cycle of a product? Like, so how, at what point you get like a feature request? How do you go ahead with the feature request, and then what happens to this entire feature, right? Like, what's the flow, from where does it start and where it goes at the end, and how does this process take place in like day-to-day life, right? Could you elaborate on that?
I'll give you an example of in video. So we wanted to launch audio recording,
Yep.
and you wanted to use that audio recording as a feature on your timeline. So InVideo is a online video making tool, so you can check that out. But we wanted to launch this feature called as audio recording, and you record your audio, you trim your audio, and then you put bits and pieces wherever you want on your main timeline. Now,
Hmm.
how do you do this? Right, this is your problem statement. Right now, you go back as a UX person, you go back to the product manager, they will start do the researching. They will start looking at what others are doing. They will start looking at the right set of experience that you want to build. They will put down the notes, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. These are the 5 steps that you can take to do this particular feature or to, use this particular feature. All good on pen and paper. Perfect. Now it goes to the UI designer. It goes to the UI designer. He'll start looking at the scenarios. He will realize that, okay, this scenario was not given by the UX person, but he will start actually adding the scenarios by adding one more extra screen, saying that, okay, you've not given me the feature of deleting a particular clip,
Hmm.
but I have added that. So even, product guy will understand that, okay, I think deleting is also important. So
Yep.
you kind of collaborate these thoughts and your ideas and your feature list on either Notion or either some document that you're using for
Right.
collaboration. UI designer will give you now a complete flow that how do I audio record? You click
Hmm.
on that red button, your audio starts, your waveforms start coming in. He will start building that flow for you. So once you have these flows, like which are ready and built, you do one round of testing with the product managers to get like first round of feedback from them, saying that is this UI solving their problem or not. They will give
Right.
you very honest feedbacks, and they will give you very honest reviews of what you built. They might also tell you that, okay, you missed out on this screen, you missed out on building this interaction, so you go back, you build that. And then you also do one round of user testing. Now let's say you call up some existing set of user, you call them, say that, okay, we are launching this audio feature. I mean, first you have to get them excited about that particular feature that you are building, and then
Right.
you have to make sure that they are given the right problem statement and they are given the right clickable prototype to them so that they
Hmm.
can play around with that particular feature. Again, you will get a lot of feedback from that as well. You go back, analyze that feedback, that it is actually aligning with your product roadmap or not. You make those changes, then you do the handover. Okay, guys, this is what we have to build. These are the screens. Go ahead, ask me your questions. These are the flows. And this is what you have to build. And there are these 15-day of sprints that you want to follow. You can still have that structure of 15-day. You kind of break down the features now out of these 5 flows that you build. Take the first flow, just the first flow for first 15 days.
Hmm.
Crack that as simple as possible. Take the next 15 days for the next set of 2 flows, which are easier. All you have to do is just build a scrollable, draggable timeline or something. It's up to you. So again, the workflows that you can work on is like sprints or agile methods that you want to use. You can do that also, but usually sprints work really well, in my
Right.
opinion. Right. So yeah,
So even
that's
designers use sprints, right? Like the
yeah,
whole UI UX design team,
internally
is
also. Yeah.
internally also prioritizes a set of features, and then you guys target. Chalo, let's finish this one feature, then this one feature, this one feature. That's how
Correct.
you approach it. Okay,
Correct.
interesting,
Correct. Correct.
interesting. And so one point you mentioned is usability. Like you talk to users, right? About
Mm.
a prototype. You show the prototype and set goals to the users. If you had to do this, given a prototype, can you do it, right? And that's how you
Correct.
find out success or failure of a UI
Off a
UX,
screen. Yeah.
right? How many users do you generally talk to? If let's say you were given a screen and
Mm.
let's say a goal, so the objective of the screen is how many people get converted, click on
Correct.
the pay now or buy now button, or
Mm. Mm.
and successfully complete the buy now flow. How many
Mm.
users would you talk to finally realize, okay, this is enough, we have enough information, let's take it ahead?
There are two approaches. If it's a smaller team, I
Hmm.
would say that you should look at 3 to 5 people, not more than that. But if
Understood.
it's a larger audience, and if it's a larger set of it's a huge team, for example, then you create like a focus group or a group study kind of a thing, where you kind of share a link to like some 100 people or 50 people or something, and then you might get some sort of good graph or good chart of data saying that people are understanding this thing or not.
Right.
So it
Interesting.
kind of varies. It kind of varies. So if it's a small startup, you can start off with at least 3 to 5 people to just test that particular feature. And if it's a larger team like Stripe or PayPal or Uber or Ola, you can test it out with some lot of large crowd basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So um, I think we are all right now witnessing this revolution, AI revolution that's occurring in front of our eyes, right? And it's almost displacing, or it's threatening to displace like a huge set of people from their jobs. Everyone is worried, okay, copywriters, the open AI is taking over everything, right?
Mm.
How do you see AI impacting your field of UI UX, at least in,
Mm.
like your first hand experiences? What do you see on the ground? How is it,
Mm.
how's it changing UI UX?
I think if you ask me personally, then my workflow has become much more simpler and easier by AI. I would say a lot of Figma plugins which have this AI built in. I think they have solved a lot of problems that way. ChatGPT, GPT-4, and Jasper, and a lot of chatbots, and like lot of AI apps have come out today. I feel it's a very, very nascent stage for them. I think it's growing very fast, but it's still at a very nascent stage. No, it's not going to take up our jobs for sure, because I think if you don't evolve your job with AI, and if you don't learn those AI tools, you are in the right track. But if you don't learn those AI tools and just stick with what your workflow is, then you might run out of a job
Hmm.
pretty soon, because the your job will be taken over by the person the person who knows how to use this AI tool.
Right.
That guy will take up your job.
Okay.
So so there are two ways to look at it that way. So either you evolve with what you AI is doing today,
Hmm.
you understand what tools are doing, AI tools are doing, so learn those tools basically, so that you can kind of you need to have some person to use that tool, right? AI is not
Yeah.
going to automate things and just create. It has some amazing capabilities though, like Mid Journey is there today.
Right.
There is
Stable diffusion.
you Stable Diffusion is there today. So there's some amazing things which are going on, but that doesn't mean that you just keep those things as is, but you have to put those things in practice to learn those things and imply those things on your workflow as well.
Right. Interesting.
So it is some time for sure, like they might take up our jobs, I'm not too sure, but if you know, start learning those tools for sure. I think that
Interesting.
is one of the best advice that I think I've read somewhere, that start learning AI and start learning those tools to kind of be in the market, like what's going on, not just kind of neglecting AI completely. Because I've also read that tomorrow morning, even your content, right? I mean, for content writers, it's going to be really difficult because of Chat GPT, but it's not like that. There is original content versus made by AI content.
Yeah.
You will eventually start seeing made by AI as a tag tomorrow,
Right.
right? You will
Right.
see, even for stable diffusion images and stuff like that, you will start seeing an AI tag made by AI to
Hmm.
have that originality in place. Like, okay, right? Even for a director, like if you're filming something and you want a script, you will have that original script writer who is writing it, and that's where
Interesting.
originality still comes into picture. But over here, there will eventually you will start seeing that, okay, made by AI, created by AI, built by AI. You will start seeing those things happening in near future. Yeah.
Interesting. So, I guess there is value in human creation. Like the who creates it also holds some value, inherent value, I suppose, right? Especially when it comes to design
Mm.
and creative fields. I think that makes sense because I think recently also there were a lot of painting competitions where a lot of
Correct.
designers submitted AI built like mid journey stuff, and one of them won. But then the designer rejected the winning prize and said, "Okay, this is like a starting point, but this is like capabilities for designers also, right?" So yeah, it
Correct.
does make sense. Have you seen any like your workflow being changed, like your own workflow? Have you incorporated any design tools?
Uh, I would say Notion AI has some amazing capabilities right now. It's a game changer, I would say. So if you want to write some YouTube script, or if you want to write some sort of a paragraph, or if you want to if you even Chat GPT, like
Yeah.
Mid Journey, I mean, you can definitely imbibe them in your workflows. Like if you want some data, or if you want some image, or if you want some right set of UI. Even in UI, for example, there is something called as UI Zard,
Hmm.
UIZARD. I think all you have to do is just type in saying that create a login experience for a travel community who is there in Spain.
Right.
You just write this much, and it will start creating at least 5 to 10 screens and give you.
Damn.
So it's like, you need to know how to work through that application. So it kind of has changed my time frame of building something, but it has also made me realize that, okay, you need to learn them. You need to learn those tools. You need to understand the prompts that you have to give to the Chat GPT. You have to learn them, right
Yeah.
prompts that you have to give.
Yeah.
So that is going to be the next thing for a lot of people, to kind of not fall into the trap of, out of running out of jobs
Yep.
today.
What about inspiration? Like, I think a lot of designers go through a lot of websites to find inspiration. What are
Mm-hmm.
the places you go to, like just to find inspiration for a project or for a feature?
I think it's a very good question. So it actually depends on a designer actually. So whenever I have been referencing things like, going for inspiration and all, there was a time like back in the days where we used to work together. I think Dribble was a place,
Yeah.
Behance was a place. But those things have changed now. I mean, I still go to Dribble and Behance. It's not like I don't go to those places. But there are some new tools which have come up. Like, for example, there is layers.to. A lot of designers start adding this designs over there, and you get some amazing references from there. There is godly.website and all, which gives you, website references. There is landingbook
Hmm.
.com, one page love. Then there is awards website where you can kind of, look at some amazing award winning websites and stuff. So this is like my workflow, I would say. Before jumping into some designs, I go to those set of places, create like some mood board, understand what others are doing. I try to build after that. It's just like not looking at just Dribble and saying that, okay, let's pick this component from here and just add it. But first, let's create a mood board, let's set the tonality, and then start working. I think it's not bad that you can go to Dribble or Behance. It's not like, completely bad, but there are other good places also where you can go.
Interesting.
But this
Um.
was, but this
Hmm.
was again, this was 3 4 years back.
Yep.
These website link. Today you will be surprised. I go to Twitter for inspiration. Imagine. Twitter has become my go-to place because I've been following the right set of audience on Twitter. All the
Yep.
designers, all the product designers, all the UI designers, all brand designers, branding designers. So they post some amazing inspiration that you realize, and you start bookmarking them one by one.
Yep. Yep.
And then you created one repository now on the
Yep.
site on Twitter also. So even if you don't find anything over here, you go to Twitter and look at all just the bookmarks one by one. You will find something that might just click, and then you start working. Right. So inspiration is found in this lamest possible places today. Right. So it's up to you.
I'm gonna post all the people you follow, the inspiring designers cut Twitter handle here, if you guys are
Yeah.
on Twitter still. Uh,
Yeah.
so you have you've seen a lot of designers,
Hmm.
you've seen a lot of designs, and you've sort of you have surfaced with a lot of people, right? A lot of designers working through these processes. What are the most common mistakes that you see UI UX or product designers making, and at least the current flows, the current ways uh, y'all take up a project?
I think you're going to make me fall into a trouble after pinpointing all this. But I would say that there is certain set of overconfidence that UI designers have. It also applies to me sometimes. Like when you work on a project, right?
Right.
You just realize that, okay, now I've put shitloads of effort in making this, and I'm 100% sure that it's going to work for sure. I say it 100% of the time it's wrong. Like, it's just pretty pictures that they put. And if you ask the developers, then they'll be like, how is it even possible? Like, how will I build this? So there's always this gap that you're trying to create, right? So here is a very higher expectation versus what the reality is that you're trying to build, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, that you need to come out of this dilemma that all your designs are going to work and all your designs are going to get built. So come out of that loop and try to understand how much can be built, how capable is the developer, how much is possible from your design. Let's say cut down on certain 10 things from your design and let's still build it. But that is not always the case that your designs are actually going to be pixel perfect.
Hmm.
So that's the mistake I feel that a lot of designers do today. And I think
Interesting.
the second mistake that I've noticed is uh, putting your designs and asking for validation on Twitter and LinkedIn by putting this or this.
Okay.
Give a thumbs up for this and give a thumbs down for this. But why do you need that validation from social media, right? Why do
Right.
you need that? Maybe you have created some sort of community to do that. You
Hmm.
have some sort of Discord group to give you the feedback for that. Ask your mentor or ask your users who are doing it. But it doesn't make sense to put it on social media. What are you trying to prove by doing this? It just
Right.
gives, I feel that it's giving a wrong impression that you don't know design. You're
Right.
asking us to tell you that if this is right or wrong,
Yeah.
right? I feel that it's completely wrong. So I've never done that, and I don't think intend to do that. But I also tell this thing to my designers also, that if you want any feedback, there is a way that you ask your audience, and then there is a way that you ask your mentors, and then there's a way that you ask your community also,
Yeah.
right? But not by posting this. Give a thumbs up if this UI is right. Give a thumbs down if this UI is right.
Right.
I feel that it's a very wrong way
I
to
think it's a
approach.
very it's a very it's a creator is always going to be a little biased towards their creation, right? So we always look for, okay, fine, I've put so much effort on this. I better get
Let
thumbs up
me,
on
yeah.
one of them at least.
Correct. So you have that notion already in mind, right?
Yeah.
So I think
Right.
so. But then again, you're creating a wrong impression. Like if tomorrow morning, if you're working for a bigger client, for example, and if they see this,
Yeah.
they will realize that he is not confident in building this.
Right. Right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about potential hires? So
Hmm.
as you are a lead, you're leading teams, right? I'm sure you've been taking a lot of interviews of prospects who want to join your company, or who want to get into your team.
Hmm.
What do you look for? Sorry, what do you look for in a resume? Because there was a time when you needed formal education for everything, and that was like a minimum
Hmm.
requirement, right? You don't even get into the room without having like a degree, or a master's or something like that. Is
Hmm.
there a minimum requirement to even get an interview with you? And once that happens, what are you looking for in a resume, so that the audience can build a resume for
So
themselves?
so I have interviewed a lot of designers. So there are a mix of things that go around. Like it doesn't end at your resume, but it actually starts from your portfolio,
Okay.
right? I just look at resume just for the heck of it, like what are they doing, what are their academics, and what are their background. Or I just look that for that, because in the end, I think work matters for me. So I look at their portfolio first. So obviously, how strong your Behance is, or how strong your website portfolio is, that kind of creates your first impression as a designer, that how detailed are you with your work, or how structured are you with your layers, or how structured are you with your components that you build. So that creates like a good impression that you are a
Right.
good designer, you are a structured designer, and you know what you're doing, right?
Yep.
That creates like the first impression, okay, that this could be a good hire. But then after that, you also have to analyze another thing, that let's say if I give you a small case study, like a go home case study, take home case study, are you able to solve that in like 5 days? Are you able to come up with some crazy solutions to solve that particular problem statement? Either it
Hmm.
could either be a wireframe, or it could either be a simple UI that you can build,
Yep.
right? So I do that as well. I ask them saying that, okay, here's a problem statement. Go ahead. You have 5 days, and then you have to present that to me. How good
Okay.
are you with the presentation? How good are you with the presentation skills? How good are you to understand that particular problem and answer that particular problem in your designs that you created? So that kind of makes or breaks your whole, uh, like that's the way I will be able to accept you as one of my team members. Like if you're able to solve that particular problem, that's the second most important thing that I look at. And the third is the culture fit, I would say. Like
Hmm.
you have to have that sense of, design knowledge of, uh, if I ask you what's the best website, you'll have to be very quick to answer me that. If I
Right.
ask you what's the best app that you use on a daily basis, you should be able to tell me that.
Yep.
And at that point of time, if you think, okay, oh, I'm sorry, then you don't know. You're not into this particular digital field. You're not into this whole field of design. I mean, you are not looking at references at all. You're not
Yep.
looking at websites at all. You're not finding the right inspiration.
Right.
So it's a no for me then. But if that person is really giving me some amazing examples like Stripe, uh, Dribble, Behance, you go for these inspirations, Pinterest,
Hmm.
Twitter, go to these set of inspirations, Swiggy, Zomato. Then you know that this guy is the right candidate.
Interesting. I think, like, if there were one word to explain what you said, I guess it's curiosity, right? Curiosity to look
Curiosity
for.
to look for, correct, correct.
Yep.
So you analyze that, right? That's the third most important thing that I would say is
Interesting.
is is needed to kind of hire. Yeah.
So you spoke about culture, like you referred culture, and I believe you worked in these different cultures, right? First one would be a startup, a budding startup that's just got its funding. Another would
Hmm.
be a startup that has not got funding, and one would be like a much larger company that is established,
Hmm.
that has like a very strong annual revenue. So it's like self-fulfilling sort of company. What are the cultural differences that you felt? And let's say for someone who wants to get into a company, right, he would have to, or she would have to look at all these three options.
Hmm.
What's your take on each of these different cultures?
So, if you're asking me as a culture difference, I would give an example of my my working experience with Glitch
Yep.
and my working experience with the product side of companies.
Right.
Okay, so working in Glitch was very, very tedious, to be
It
very
is an
honest.
agency, right? Glitch is an
It's an
agency.
agency. It's a digital agency. I think it got acquired by some other company recently, but it was a very budding, an upcoming digital agency. Like I saw them grow from. I've seen them grow from 30 people. I would say I was some 20th or 24th person in that team, but it has grown from more than 200 people in quick span of time, like 1 or 2 years, and it expanded to Delhi, Bangalore eventually. Uh, so agency life was always difficult, always difficult, where you have to manage 10 brands, 15 brands at a time, right? And you have to always come up with some constant creative thought to come up with that particular, post or a microsite or a design. You have to always be creative. So it's a very, 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 stressful environment, completely stressful environment. But you also learn a lot in the process about yourself also and about the team and how the working goes, how you can talk to the brand
Right.
manager, how the brands work, how much budget is allocated to the brand. So culturally, it's very difficult to work in an agency. It's a very tedious task. And there are
Hmm.
timelines involved as well over there. But now I realized that I wanted to focus more on a product side, focus only on one product, give my wholehearted work to a product. Now here the culture difference was a little, I would say, more of digging into only one feature majority of your time. Again, that was also a very tedious task. That if
Hmm.
this screen is right, or if that screen is right, or if this feature launch is right, are we even actually making sense with this particular feature that we are trying to build or not? So that's
Hmm.
where a lot of effort was going, but it was
Hmm.
not as tedious as what we used to do in Glitch. But here it was more of a collaborative effort between your designers, developers, product managers, owners, everyone. So
Right.
culturally, if you see, there's a huge difference. over here as well.
Yeah.
Here, you know for the fact that you are running with the constraint of your budget as well. You might lose out on funding sometimes. You might lose out on your audience sometimes. You might lose out on, for example, if you remember, we had hackathons as well. We used to sit in the night, we used to develop and then roll out on the next day. So it was a little fun to work in this set of environment sometimes. And then I realized that okay, product design and product working in a product oriented and a SaaS oriented company, that's where I see myself. Right. So
Interesting.
culturally, both of them are different that way.
Right.
But yeah, it makes sense to choose the right uh, culture fit as well. Like I mean, for the students also, like even for newbies who want to join, I think don't restrict yourself to kind of asking questions to the recruiter. I mean, throw questions to them also, like what do they do? How strong is your team? How big is your team? How what's their workflow basically? You should definitely ask these questions to them also, so that you also realize that okay, does it make sense for you to be a part of that culture or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, these set of questions you should definitely ask in your interviews as well.
Right. What makes a good leader? You have been leading teams for the last couple of years, right? 4 or 5 years, and you've been collaborating with other leaders as well. Um,
Hmm.
what are like the what's like that recipe that makes a good leader?
Hmm. I would say I think there is no right answer to this thing because it all depends on your team versus how good is your leader. It all depends on that. For me, I think it's more of a collective output that you're trying to build.
Hmm.
If they're working closely towards building that one feature, all of them are collaborating, all of them are giving your ideas. uh, I personally believe that I don't see myself as a leader, even though I do lead a team, but I don't see that myself as a leader. I'd see more of a helping hand to them, or a mentor to them, or a side by side sitting colleague, saying that okay, look at this reference. I think this is really interesting. I think you should take inspiration from this. But I will not boss around. I will not try to tell you that, okay, go in this direction only. You don't have to think anything apart from this. I'm not putting, barriers or like, blinders while you're working.
Right.
So for a good leader, I would say it's more of a good collaboration that you can build, your team environment that you can build. A good leader also needs to know the forte of your team members, who has what capabilities and how much can you churn out from that particular team member. You
Hmm.
need to know those things. You need to know their skill sets. So it's very, very important to use them at the right point of time. So
Hmm.
you realize that as well. But for a good leader, I think it's more of having a good collaborative environment for whatever you are launching, and not work in isolation is what I feel. Like
Right.
I've tried and tested this thing, because even working in isolation sometimes helps, because you can come up with some different ideas. But if you work collaboratively, your problems can be solved faster, because there are
Right.
a lot of ideas that might come together,
Makes
right?
sense.
And then you will work towards only one goal, right? That way. So it all depends basically. Yeah. There is no right or wrong answer to this. Yeah.
For a UI UX designer, or for any designer for that matter, what is
Hmm.
the logical extreme? So, what I mean by logical extreme is, let's say, for an astronaut, their logical extreme is like to go to
Hmm.
Mars, like to man a rocket to Mars or to Moon. And another example would be for a doctor. For a doctor, like their extreme logical extreme would be to cure cancer or cure AIDS, something like that. Like the pandemic that we just went
Hmm.
through, to find a vaccine. That would be their logical extreme, right?
Hmm.
What, according to you, is that logical extreme for a designer?
I would say that for a designer, it's the last extreme part would be that if your competitor is noticing your work.
Oh,
You understand, like where they start coming to your website and even they sign up and they use your particular website, right? That's a good win situation or an extreme situation. I think I've achieved what I want to do. Like if your competitors are coming and actually looking at what features you're trying to build next, it's like someone is getting inspired by your work. And that's where you feel like at least 50, you are just 50% there. And the rest 50%, I think it's the extreme is that you constantly strive for better experiences. You constantly strive for making that particular screen, go with the trend, or adapt to a new trend, or uh, like let's say for example right now a lot of people are still talking about bringing back skeuomorphism in design.
Right.
Like it's very difficult for designers to adapt to that, but it had started when the first iPhone had come out, and now they're bringing back again, right?
Yep.
Then there was this flat design trend, there was this gradient trend, so you have to adapt to those trends very quickly, right? So I mean, it's that is where the whole extreme starts coming up, saying that your website is outdated, boss. I mean, you should definitely work on something which is currently going on in trend. You have to create your first impression, right? So I think that those are certain set of extremes that even I go to kind of uh, uh, look at that thing not in isolation, but in terms of holistic experience where others are also looking at your work. Even you are getting noticed, you are going for some talks, or you're doing these sort of interviews, or you're doing your blog articles, you're writing about your experiences, you are talking to other designers, you're talking to other product managers about their experiences and trying to learn together and imbibe that. So those are certain extremes that I would also look at that way.
Let me ask you for advice. So, for someone young, for the young folks out there who are just coming out of college, what what advice would you give when it comes to picking a career choice, or like generally professional choice, right? Because a lot of kids today are looking to build that impact, to make an impact in like the society, in their own communities.
Hmm.
What advice would you give them to do the best work that would have the best impact in their career?
Um, so this kind of goes to almost all the college students and even school students today. Like learn early and adapt early is what my philosophy is. At least especially for students. Like don't wait for you holding that degree in your hand, or throwing that cap up and wearing that black drapes. Don't wait for that. Learn early, adapt early, build early, test early, and fail early. I mean, as early as you can do those things, right? You obviously will have shitloads of free time. Like utilize that time to build something on in the background. Like you have weekends, you have days which are off, you work on one particular product, or you work on something that you really love, not only just the product, but you work on something that you really love. So learn early, adapt early, build early. I think that whole fundamental of doing it early is something that I would give as a you know feedback, or not a feedback, but a more of a you know helping, inspiring kind of a thing. You should take that as a lesson, I would say, that if a person is building it super early, I think you have a huge advantage for the next few years. Like,
Yep.
you're always ahead of your rat race that you are going,
Yep.
right? But
Yep.
again, it still doesn't stop there. You can still explore. You have a lot of options. Even if you fail, you will realize that you've learned a lot from that failure, and then you move forward to a new set of things. It's a part and parcel. Like Ford cars were built by that guy Harrison Ford by in the age of 40.
Not
Like he
Harrison Ford, right?
realized
Harrison Ford is an actor.
Harrison Ford
Henry
Harrison Ford
Ford.
is an actor. Henry Ford, something with H Ford or something. I don't know. But he built the car when he was 40.
Right.
Harrison Ford is an actor. Okay. Henry Ford is the guy. Henry Ford is the guy. Sorry,
He's the
my bad.
Star Wars actor.
So So he built a car when he was 40. He didn't realize at that point of time that he's gonna build a car, right? So he failed at many other careers before. So I mean, it's up to you that you realize this. If you realize this early, well and good. If not, it's still okay. You still move forward.
So at least for now, we all know we are most likely going to die, right? We are most likely at some point not going to
AI
be
is
alive.
gonna take over.
Keeping that aside, that's a whole conversation. I think we'll keep it to part two some other time. Uh, but at least for now, we know that at some point we won't be alive, whilst a lot of people who know us or who we have touched in literal and metaphorical sense uh,
Hmm.
are going to continue to live. How would you want to be remembered uh, to them and to everyone once you are not there? Right? What is it that, let's say, someone remembers you? What would you want them to remember
You
you for?
you want me to write my own eulogy? Is what you're saying?
See, this is the time, bro. This is the time. This is your opportunity. I guess my um an indirect way of asking this is like, what are your ultimate goals? I suppose that's what I'm trying to touch, right? Those ultimate goals are what we all try to build like a legacy of. Like we might not become Steph Curry, but those are at least goals that we can have, right? Like you said, 40. At the age of 40, he made a car, dude. Come on, we can at least make a website. Yeah, yep, yep.
Right. So I think I feel that I want to. I'm still saying that I'm not perfect yet. I'm still striving for that whole perfection. But I want to be moving forward. I want to become an indie maker. Like I want to build websites. I want to solve problems. Probably build some tools which help at least some 100,000 set of people on a daily basis, that they come back to this particular website and use that. I want to build something. I want to be remembered specifically for that, saying that okay, this was a website that was built for this guy, and he kind of helped me solve this particular problem. That is one side of what I think. But considering this whole data and AI and everything, somewhere I feel that I want to remove all my data from the internet, and I want to stay out of this whole information loop and go sit in some forest and build a cabin and work from there. So there are two sides of me that I want to live. So again, it all depends, but I'm more inclining towards becoming an indie maker someday, near future. Yeah,
I think everyone is feeling that, like the amount of
I think it's
digital
eventually
reliability.
going to be so it's eventually going to be like that, right? So you will start seeing a lot of freelancers eventually. The freelance
Yep.
culture is going to grow tenfolds, hundredfolds from
Right.
tomorrow. Like, I mean, people don't want to work for companies. People want to work for themselves. People have
Yep.
started realizing this thing after Corona. They've realized that in free time they can definitely build something. There are a lot of side projects which have happened. There are a lot of indie makers who have evolved after Corona, right?
Yep.
So I mean, that's the culture. I would also love to be a part. Like, I want to be remembered for that. Yeah.
So awesome, dude. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Like
Thanks for having me.
this,
Yeah.
this is like a like you're doing me a solid by coming on as like the first podcast. Like literally, I feel like a child
Super.
right now trying this out. And for the viewers who don't know, we've we've recorded this. This is the second time we are recording this podcast. The first time was my screw up, and like, so you know how angry he is on me. Like now he doesn't look like he generally looks. This smile is not a smile. There's like anger
No, I'm
behind it.
not angry.
But thank you
No,
so
I'm not
much.
angry. Yeah.
Thank you so much
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
for for coming along, and like you have helped me grow also as a developer, as a designer, and generally as a friend as well. Thank you so much for your time, bro. Thank you so much for
Super.
that. Have a great
Super.
weekend.
Have
Bye.
a great weekend. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.
See you.
Hey, I'm back. I hope you found this conversation useful. If you did, do share it with at least one person who you think would find this conversation useful, just like you. And one more thing, support the podcast by rating us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do hit the like and sub button. That's the only way we can get this algorithm to work for us. And if you want us to talk to an expert from your field of interest, make sure to tweet us at InquiryR. Next week, we are going to talk to a backend engineer and understand the inner workings of some of the world's most popular digital products. Until then, keep exploring.